Hi, everyone. It's Tevis, and welcome to today's Game Changer chat. I am so thrilled to have you here. As you may have noticed, I never know exactly what is going to happen in these chats because we don't come into this venue and conversation to serve up a bunch of spoon-fed ideas, like elevator pitches, all that stuff that seems like it's everywhere online. So every single time I sit down with someone, I'm always moved and amazed. And that's why I share these conversations, because I get to talk to smart people all the time, and people who aren't only smart in their jobs, but they've given themselves permission to be genius in how they build their lives. And that is the spirit of my book, The Game Changer's Guide to Radical Success. So I am just going to give you some quick tech notes on what it is to be in this conversation. We are simulcasting across YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook, 2 places in Facebook. And what that means is that we have a chat box here, but we don't always see the chats until after the conversation is over. So if you do put in a chat, I solemnly swear, and I know my guest does too, that we will absolutely circle back. We would love to answer you with real time. If we see it real time, we absolutely will. And if we don't, we promise to circle back. So really quickly, before I dive in and share my amazing guest with you, just a couple things are going on. I am going to be launching another Game Change Mastermind in September. And it's a small number of people. The outcomes have been amazing. If you're curious about that, please reach out to me. And I'm also going to be offering, for the first time ever, a course I created called I'd Heart My Job. Now, I know that sounds like, what? We're overachievers. We're high performers. And the truth is, as Francis Ford Coppola once said, no matter what you do, you better love it, because you're going to hate it sometimes. And this is really about reinventing our relationship with work. So I encourage you to get in touch with me and find out about those things. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce my guest. Her name is Stela Lupushor, and she and I met because we're both org nerds. I think you're the first, no, you're the second true I've had a couple org nerds, come to think of it. But you and I met at a conference, and I remember I had seen you maybe at some conference board stuff, and really being struck by the rare combination of emotional intelligence and acumen around data, right? So what's so sexy about that, before I dive in and start to grill you about who you are and all that stuff, is that it's really rare to be able to wrap your head around all this stuff that everyone says, oh, those are soft skills. Those don't matter. That won't deliver on the bottom line. To have someone who can really stand fully in the human experience and also say, gosh, how do we harness this? Because humans are cats and you can't hurt them. You know, they're going to do what they want. And that's what you've been doing, is trying to figure out how to herd cats. So without further ado, my guest, who's been in the human capital space, how long have you been?
I want to say 23, 24 years. Yeah.
Yeah, but you started when you were 10, right? So.
About then.
Yeah, you've been head of people in very big, huge companies, right?
I run people analytics at a couple of financial institutions. I also led the social analytics, which is a whole different universe, and HR strategy at IBM. So I have had the privilege of being part of different organizations, as well as be consultant to large organizations, mostly Fortune 500. So I've seen it all, I believe, from
the good, the bad, the ugly. Well, before we hear about the good, the bad, the ugly, I got to ask you my favorite question. What was your favorite thing to do as a little one?
I was really into science fiction. I loved reading about it. I loved imagining it. And I think the more I grew older, the more I realized that all of those science fiction books are really cookbooks for current innovators.
Cookbooks for current innovators. You know, I am a sci-fi nerd as well. I mean, I chowed down on Piers Anthony and all that stuff as a kid growing up. And I had the sublime pleasure of going to, there's some Nebula Awards or something, right? And I had the sublime pleasure of going to an award talk, and Neil Gaiman, I never know how to say his name. He gave the keynote, and he read a couple things, and he argued that science fiction is the only form of fiction that is truly innovative.
Yeah.
Because every other story has been told. Now, we could also say, well, the archetypes all just repeat over and over with accoutrement. But I'm curious, do you feel like your life has aligned with that childhood passion? I mean, did you think that your life was somehow going to reflect science fiction? Because it seems to me like it has.
It's not something that it occurred to me to begin with, but I think probably 10 years ago, I realized that I am ahead of my time. I am a few years before the trends begin becoming big and everybody talks about it. And I've learned to accept it, because up until that time, I could connect the dots. I could see where the scenario is going to evolve, but nobody would get me. And it felt really lonely. And then I said, all right, I think this is a very different way of accepting yourself and being okay with the fact that you're ahead of time. And then making sure you don't say, I told you so, when everybody starts talking about it.
Choke it back. You're like, it's funny too, because I actually had a psychic. I went to a psychic when I was 30 in honor of my 30th birthday, and she said, "You're from the future, and you're always going to be from the future." And at first, my ego went, "Oh," and then she said, "But it's really hard.
It is
to be from the future, because it takes a while for the world to catch up to you." And that's kind of what you're speaking to, is that, yeah, it's kind of an ego hit, but damn, no satisfaction in that, right?
It's okay. I always think that as long as I can hang out with my kids, I can scratch that itch, because they all like, hey, mom, you don't know about this or you don't know about that. So they are my educators.
They humble you. Yeah, they humble you. Well, folks can tell from your accent, which is lovely. And my Southern accent comes out depending on who I'm speaking with. So please know that it may just creep out, but it may be out already and I'm just not aware of it. But where did you grow up? Because I know that you have experienced a lot of political tumult throughout your life. And for a lot of us Americans, right, the tumult of the recent years is really something that we have not been prepared for, and we don't have a pattern for. And a lot of us, I spoke to my father through a lot of what's been happening over the past few years, and he's just been aghast and dismayed that our country is where it is. So tell us where you're from and what your human journey through the political mayhem that is humanity on the planet. What's it been like for you?
I will start with an interesting story from 2008, 2009, when we just moved to US and we lived in Boston. And
from where did you move?
I'll get there. And I was on a project in Memphis, Tennessee, and we were coming from a dinner, and the police car stopped us, just a routine check. And the policeman asked, like, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Boston. He said, oh, I thought I've heard an accent. So that's my accent story. But originally I am.
Yeah, compared to Memphis. Yeah. I speak Tennessee, by the way. I lived there for a long time, and Southern accents are not all the same. So.
No, the same. But
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a country that doesn't exist. I spoke a language that doesn't exist, and it's Republic of Moldova, what at that time was part of the Soviet Union. When I was a student at the university, the whole Soviet Union started unraveling. Moldova became an independent country. The language that we spoke during the Soviet Union time was an adopted Romanian language. So the Romanian vocabulary, but the alphabet was Cyrillic. And it was called Moldovan as opposed to Romanian. So to me, that experience, it's something that really told me that there's nothing permanent in life, right?
Yeah.
You think you have a worldview, you think you have a country, you have a language, you grow up in a certain environment, and then suddenly overnight everything disappears. And it can be disoriented, but it also teaches the resilience. And having gone through the fallout and having seen how the economy was completely in disarray, how humans lost all of their savings, how political tensions began, how different political parties started fighting each other, how corruption started blooming. All of that led me to always be in pursuit of something better, something that aligns to my values, because that was not the environment where I felt I could do that. And that kind of led me to say yes to everything that was a little better. And that's how I ended up in Ukraine. That's how I ended up working in Moscow for a while, and then we moved to US in 1998. And it's been one of those classical scenarios. And when people ask me, do you have a 5-year plan? It's one of those questions that I cringe, because if I had a 5-year plan, I would have probably been still back in Moldova doing some, programming in some telecom company. But the more defined we try to make our life, the more enriching and incredible it can become.
Yeah. I love that idea of what's the next better, right? And can we allow ourselves to be adaptable enough to recognize the next better? Because I think a lot of times we do create these kind of hamster trails, right? Of birth, school, work, death, right? And the hamster trails run. That was a song from the 80s. I'm really dating myself from college. But we create these kind of cages for our lives. And oftentimes not understanding that our commitment to the cage is oftentimes greater than our commitment to what do I really want.
Yeah. And the other thing we need to acknowledge is the fact that that definition of what we want changes as we mature, as our priorities change, as our body adapts, as our worldview expands. So the more fixed we try to hold on to that past, the more difficult it'll be to step into that future. And to me, that beginning of things is always scary. At the same time, it's so liberating, because you don't have any baggage. You start over. We moved to US with 2 suitcases and
2 suitcases.
And we're fine.
Fist bumping you, right? So you found yourself into a career that combined this love and curiosity about humanity and this aptitude for data. Tell us a little bit, because you also said human data analytics, and then you said social analytics, and there are definitely some HR folks who watch this live stream, and I would love to not only satisfy their curiosity, but also for the folks who just hear, oh, HR, right? And they kind of poo-poo it. Oh, they're the people you go to say your insurance claim didn't, or you want to raise, or your boss was a jerk, or whatever. Like, talk to us about the beauty of the function that you probably somewhat created for yourself, given your longevity in the space.
So it all started with math and computer science education. I guess now that's called analytics. But I had nothing to do with HR. I had no idea what it involves. And it was by chance. I was at that time working for Moscow office, and everybody was being sent to learn SAP because they were going after a major client, and we were preparing the whole office on supporting that project. And they said, well, we need somebody to go learn HR module. Not that we're going to ever implement it, not that we ever plan to do anything, but it's mostly for integration purposes. And you, Stella, are a woman, so why don't you go learn HR SAP? Yes. So that's how
what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. You're a woman. Why don't you go figure out?
Exactly.
Women deal with people. Men deal with money.
Exactly. It's like, we're not going to do much with it. And once I started learning, of course, it was a kind of big learning curve to learn not only the system, but also to learn a lot of the principles related to the HR that are specific to US market, which weren't present in my past or I have ever been exposed, like all the benefits and configuration of all the options for employment, for your overtime. None of that was part of what I was doing. So
yeah.
It was a big shock, but I felt I found my place because I could relate to it. I was an employee. I could see how a lot of the things that I am going to enable through technology could impact me in a positive way. So that's where my journey into this HR world began. And I've done a lot of custom system implementation, large SAP implementations. I then moved into process because to me it was, well, technologies are technologies, but if you change the process and make it in a positive way, technology will follow. Then I realized, well, it's not really the process, it's the service delivery. So I got into service delivery because then you change the service delivery model, you adapt the process, and technology follows.
What does that mean? Because you're using some words.
Yes. So think of the organizational
service delivery. What does that really mean? Dumb it down.
If you think about HR, right, there are parts of HR that do advisory. So that's usually HR business partner that works with manager or with the leaders to understand the business needs and then provide different support that they require from HR perspective. Yeah. There's also a, so to speak, back office where payroll happens, where a lot of the programs get administered, where the systems get maintained, where the talent management and performance management and other processes are really managed. So it's the back end of that HR operations.
It's the Matrix.
Yes, it's where
Stela
magic happens.
The Matrix. Oh my God!
And
we thought it was Neo, or no, Neo's who got out of the Matrix. Stella, what have you learned? I mean, you're looking at established populations, right? Some of which, because you've worked for huge companies, some of which are probably larger than Moldova was.
Yes.
Right. So you have looked at all these data points of human beings converging with all their messy lives and personality issues and power struggles. And you've watched how all this data swirls into this cauldron and becomes a soup, right? And what I think is really curious is that because you have a set population, it's distillable in some way. What have you learned? And you add into it that work is our jungle, right? This is our ground for survival. This is where we kill or be killed, right? We eat or get eaten. We tend to befriend, but really we stab in the back, right? And I don't mean to sound negative, but maybe I do mean to sound negative because all that stuff happens a lot. Like what have you really seen to be true about humans at work?
My favorite story and my favorite example of the power of analytics, because analytics has power. we know a lot of things by gut feeling, and a lot of times we make the right choices, the right decisions. But HR typically is skewered for using their gut as a decision-making mechanism.
That's true.
The data really provides not only evidence, but the power to have equal footing in the conversation with head of finance or other more quantitative functions. So it's really something that HR needs to lean in, because it gives us the opportunity to make an impact. But my favorite story about analytics is related to the social analytics time when I was back at IBM. At that time, it was point where a lot of soul searching from HR perspective was happening. We were going through centennial celebration of the company. We were looking at what the past 100 years were like and how the company transformed, what the next 100 might look like. We did a bunch of ideation, a bunch of new solutions and experiments were funded. So I ended up working on one that was in collaboration with the research, one of the research labs in Cambridge, and we built a sentiment analysis tool. So at the core, we were ingesting all the chatter of IBMers, so over 450,000 people. We were merging the data with demographic information and anonymizing it before it got stored. So that way we were able to comply with all the privacy laws in all parts of the world. And then we were looking what people talk about. Is that positive? Is it negative? Do we see hotspot of negativity in certain regions? Do we see the negative news spreading in a certain direction? So when we were doing all of this work was ahead of our time, and it was like, what exactly is that? So they would leave us alone just because it was kind of too esoteric. And the best part happened after I already left IBM in 2014. So at that time, somebody in HR declared that the Uber is not going to be reimbursed. And one of the consultants went on this internal social network, commented on why this is a bad decision, why life of a consultant should be not made more difficult than already is. A lot of people liked, a lot of people commented, it got picked up by the tool and it got escalated. And in less than 24 hours, the policy got reversed. So to me, it's like, this is exactly the power that it brings. It gives the voice to the workers to influence the environment. It also gives the leaders the opportunity to get in front of the issue before it blows up. So
yeah, you kind of wish that was happening everywhere right now, because this cultural compass is really spinning. I mean, I spoke to one of our clients, and they have 5 days a week mandatory in office starting in July, and people are freaking out over it.
It's already happening. There's a big career reassessment. I think people are starting to value, to really put a very different value on their employment and the relationship that they get. They've been observing of the past year and a half how companies react and how people deal with the crisis. But forcing people to come back into an office was no consideration that we formed habits over the past year and a half that will absolutely be difficult, if not impossible, to change for many.
Yeah.
Why can't we trust people? And I think data could probably give you a lot of interesting insights. And it's not just the surveys, but you can look at the communication patterns. You have technology now to nudge people to connect with their friends. So it's, a lot of the excuses we used about productivity or lack of connectivity, all of those are just excuses.
Yeah,
there's always a solution for them.
Do you know, one thing I've been saying to folks is don't panic. Like, the compass is still spinning, right? Yeah. The dust is not settling. And to make your voice heard, kind of like you guys did over 450,000 people at IBM, right? But that this dust is going to take a couple years.
Absolutely.
To settle and to, as you have throughout your life, honor your urge towards better.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
Just honor your urge towards better. So I think that's amazing. So I know that you have started a couple think tanky kind of things that have uncovered some really interesting findings around ageism, specifically pertaining to women. And I want for you to share that, because I think it's really, it's one of the oldest. Oh yeah, aging women have no value. Like, it's one of the oldest, like, best kept not secret. Like, everyone just knows it, right? And I think what's amazing is the work that you're doing is showing some correlates to the systemization of it. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and I wanted to earlier interrupt you when you made a comment about I'm dating myself, because that's an internalized exhibition of ageism. We use these little signals.
It's okay to be an actor. It's okay.
Absolutely. But it's, on one side, it's a big systemic issue. I think it's one of the last isms that have not been addressed yet. And if we look at the society and how it's designed, right? Labor market doesn't care about people after 65, working age is between 16 and 65. Organizations and HR especially, how we design policies, how we design what defined as a great candidate to hire, how we define somebody who will be eligible for promotion. If you think about a woman with career gaps just because she had to make them to have children or to care for the spouse or ailing parents, with limited or multiple pivots just because, again, she had to. Rarely a woman like that will fall under the ideal candidate for whatever the choices we're going to make.
Yeah.
And by the time we reach 45, 50, kids are out of the house. We finally found ourselves. We have the power, we have the skills, we have the project management, we have the collaboration, we have the conflict management. We've got it all. And when you talk about soft skills, the hardest ones are really those soft skills to build. Every organization could benefit greatly. And we've done so many activities. And that's the beauty of what Amazing Community, which is the nonprofit organization that I founded, is focused on, is inspiring women on how to take advantage of different technology innovations and then transition their careers and skills to those spaces. Because if you're a project manager and you run SAP implementations, you can learn how to build a chatbot or basics or concepts of chatbot development and manage a chatbot development project. So it's not to shy away from the disruption that is happening to us, but how we can embrace and bring our talents to those future spaces. Because every young startup needs adult supervision and needs some of the care and support and the kind of maturity that we bring to the plate.
I think that's so important, because so much of what in uneducated circles we call soft skills, when you study the great leaders, those are actually the most important qualities, right? Humility, decisiveness, empathy, the ability to listen, the ability to delegate, right? The ability to truly empower, to collaborate, right? Like, it's so funny. You don't even have to go further than Jack, what's his name, right? Jack Welch. I mean, everyone talks about these skills, but yet the minute we talk about cultivating them actively within the organization, a lot of times it's devoured by cynicism, right? Cynicism will eat that completely and say, okay, next. And so I really want to applaud you for bringing analytics into it and for looking at this repurposing of skills, right? Because I don't even think it's necessarily upskilling. It's just a redirection, right? A reforming of skills. And what is your dream? What would be the most auspicious contribution that you could hope to make, other than being a great mom? I know you're but what would be a lifelong dream of an amazing contribution that you would hope to be able to make?
I made my mission to humanize the workplace. I think there is a lot that human resources can do. And if the data can inform that, if the analytics and insights and technology can make it easier to do that, if you think about the consumer experience and how that transformed with advent of this technology, giants like Apple and Amazon, and how now expect every other organization to provide the same experience, that type of thinking needs to come into the workplace. Because if we don't have a good experience as a worker, and we're not enabled to bring our full potential or be ourselves or be accepted for whatever and whoever we are, we're not going to perform, and we're not going to be able to deliver that experience to the customers. So it has to start from inside. And if we get at least to partially open the mindset of HR professionals on how to use that human centricity, I think will make significant changes for everyone.
Well, I just got to say, double amen. I am interviewing people now, and these are young people, and uniformly, they say, I want transparency. I want to be treated as a human being. I'd like to be asked to solve problems, not just told how to solve problems. Like, it's all the same stuff. And I just want to say that that in my mind, it is not simply human resources acting and granting themselves agency, right, to act in this way, but it's actually the alignment of every single leader to understand. You can't just hear these concepts, nod your head, and go, well, I really hope Bob gets his ass handed to him now that we have this new mission statement or this new strategy or this new human blah, blah, blah. Like, no, every single one of us has to then say, okay, I want to tell myself I'm already good at this, but I'm probably not. So how do I align? So for me, it's all about the leadership alignment. Stela, I could talk to you forever. I know we're going to talk again. I'm so glad to share you with these folks, because I think the dignity and the validity of what you are doing is really important for all of us to be aware of, that you are out there and agitating in this really beautiful way. If people want to find you, I know they can find you on LinkedIn. Amazing.community.
The organization, the nonprofit organization, is amazing.community. And also my website, the consulting part of my work, which is reframe.work.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Hold tight. I'm going to tell these people about my friend coming next week. Her name is Buddy Valentine. Don't you want a friend named Buddy Valentine? Buddy Valentine has been writing books on depression for several years, and she does it in this beautiful way, one chapter at a time. And she has given herself permission to be gender self-expressed as she prefers. She is a creator. She is a gentle, gentle, gentle soul. And I am so thrilled to share her. So please come and join us next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. And I'll send out a recommendation or a reminder. And meanwhile, Stella, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, be good, all you people. And I'll see you next week.